This is a Geek Leader. Hey, Geek Leaders, welcome to episode 132 of the podcast. I'm your host, John Rouda, and today on the show we've got Brian Prince. He's one of the founders of CodeMash, which is a conference I will be speaking at in January. If you don't have any plans yet, in January, head on up to Ohio and visit me at CodeMash. It'll be awesome. I might even be podcasting from there. But I'll definitely be speaking for sure, and there'll be lots of other speakers. They also have a section of their podcast of their conference called KidMash, and KidMash is a place where you can learn about STEM and all kinds of things. But also, I wanted to point out that today is Black Friday, which means there's lots of sales. And if you're like me, you are not getting out in the traffic to the malls, but you may be shopping online. And I've got some deals for you if you are. You can head on over to ageekleader.com and then click on the sponsors link that's in our menu. And the deals include 20% off Splashtop, one of our sponsors. Also, we have $100 off accessories when you buy a Peloton treadmill or bike. And I love my Peloton tread. I've had it for I guess it's been 9 months now, and we just absolutely love it. Also, you get if you're interested in buying a new Cybertruck or another Tesla vehicle, you can get use our referral code and get 1,000 free supercharger miles with that purchase. I love my Tesla. It's been fantastic, especially when you go to the superchargers and you charge up there. It's so convenient. It's not as difficult as you think. The range anxiety is there, but it's not as bad as you might think. But check that out at ageekleader.com. Click on sponsors. And with all that being said, please give it up for Brian Prince.
Hey, thanks for having me, John. I appreciate it.
So if you don't mind, tell the audience kind of how you got to where you are throughout your career, and then where CodeMash came into that realm, just to set some context for our conversation.
Yeah, sure. I mean, like a lot of us, I learned to develop when I was 10, and in a tiny little poor town in Maine, and we had one computer in the whole school district. And I just fell in love with it, and so I eventually went to university for computer science and physics with the idea that I would go to grad school and go work for NASA and write software for things that never came back to planet Earth, because I figured that was the hardest challenge you could do. And I was burning out at the end of my senior year of undergraduate, and my advisor was like, "Hey, let me get you a job. Take a gap year, and then you'll be ready for grad school." So I took the gap year. I fell in love with making technology real, like making it work for business and for users, and kind of fulfilling the promise that tech always seems to make to people. And I'm still in my gap year, waiting for grad school. So,
yeah, I'm still in my gap year too. I went to grad school, but then I thought I'm going to be a professor, and I still teach. I do teach part time, but I thought I'm going to get my PhD. I'm just going to wait a couple years, and those couple years turned to 20, and I still haven't got my PhD. So.
Yeah. And then, halfway through where I am now in my career, so this is probably 17 years ago, I was working for a small consulting firm, kind of leading the app dev solution side of it. A lot of people in the community would know it as Quick Solutions, but they since got bought out. And my VP of sales, he's like, "Hey, you need to start going to like these user groups and things to get our name out there." And I'm like, "Oh, come on, there's nothing these people can teach me." And I felt like I was at the pinnacle of my skill set, and there was no need to go be in the community, but I went anyway, and I loved it. And I learned that I had so much to learn. And from everyone that I engaged with. It wasn't about only meeting with other super top tier developers. It was everyone I connected with. And since then, I fell in love with the community, and it's a whole different dimension to my career that I never had before.
Yeah, I know, like for me, whenever I got involved in going to conferences, I really wanted to go just to learn. And my company that I was with at the time would not pay for us to go to any conferences, period. So it's like, well, the only way I can get to go to one would be if I get to go to for free. So I signed up to speak, even though I had no experience speaking and I was terrified of doing it. And it worked out well. I got there, I met a lot of people, and then I realized like the track in between the sessions is probably like the most valuable, because that's when you're actually talking to people and getting some information from them and building those relationships, and kind of got hooked from there with conferences in general.
Yeah, I got so much into community leadership and public speaking that I ended up getting hired by Microsoft as an evangelist. So working originally with architecture community and then eventually cloud computing and, being with Azure from basically the start, and ended up doing a ton of global travel because of it. I mean, I ended up in that role for 10 years, visiting like 45 different countries and getting to speak at a ton of different events and meeting lots of different people. And that was really, really fulfilling.
So for someone who's never been to a conference, what do you think is like the best thing that they will get out of it, and what do they need to do and prepare for coming to an event like CodeMash?
So I think there's two angles to when you go to, whether it's a simple. I remember a long time ago we had a ton of these little one-day events called Day of .NET, where you could go one day, it was for free. And so one, I think you need to go into it with the idea that you're investing in your own career. Your company will invest in your job. They're not going to invest in your career. Like you were just saying, they weren't going to pay for you to go to a conference. So whether it's you're investing your time or your money to be able to get a hotel room or whatever, and there's a ton of great local stuff. It doesn't have to be the big expensive conferences that in Vegas or whatever. So part of that is just knowing it's an investment. The other part is going to sessions and showing up and being ready to learn. And I think more importantly, connecting with people and learning from their perspectives, the different take on technology. Because it's part of it is the science, if you will, of how do you use this particular framework. So but part of it is the art. Like, now, how can I bend that framework to my will, and how can I get value out of that framework? And getting people's perspectives on that stuff is what's, I think, more important. So like you said, the time between the sessions is where the real valuable stuff happens.
Yeah, and I like your point about trying out the local events. I know where I'm at near Charlotte, North Carolina, we have meetups all the time that are free. You can just go to the Microsoft campus up here and go to a meetup. Usually they feed you too, which is awesome. But you get to meet people, get that experience of what it's like to go to a conference, so that when you get somewhere, you're not quite overwhelmed. Because I know my first event, I was really overwhelmed with what's going to happen. Where do I need to go? I've never been to the city before. I'm a little bit lost, a little bit confused. And hopefully, the more you do it, the more comfortable you get.
Yeah, and I would say, don't be afraid to do what you need to do to get the most out of it for what you need. And I've seen lots of people sit through a session they're not happy with. And it's not that the speaker's bad or whatever, it's just not what they need. And like, get up and move, go to another session, go hang out in the lobby or in the hall. And in open spaces, we like to call that law of 2 feet, right? Like, so if that session is not like making you happy, go to another session. I've never met a speaker that would get mad if someone left a session, and just make your way out, go butterfly somewhere else, and go find another session, catch the second half of that other session or whatever.
Yeah, and speakers definitely don't mind if you come in late too, because we'd rather you be there than
no. Yeah.
And I would rather someone leave than just sit there and look at me like I'm an idiot or something like that when I'm speaking, for sure. So
right.
So why did you guys go about starting CodeMash? What was that first day of discovery, of figuring it out, of talking about it, or where did the idea come from? Because I'm sure there's some story behind there that's interesting.
Oh, there's an epic origin story. It was, at the time, this was 15 years ago, right up around now, actually. And Drew Robbins was an evangelist for Microsoft at the time, like a community leader, and Josh Holmes as well. And Drew focused on developers and .NET and Visual Studio, and Josh focused on architects, and in the Ohio Heartland region. And so Drew knew all of the user group leaders. I was the .NET user group leader. Jim Holmes was the .NET user group leader from Dayton, which is a couple hours away. Chris Judd was the Java and iOS type user group leader. Jason Gilmore was there because he's a very popular open source author and PHP and stuff like that. And there might have been a couple other people at that, but we went out to dinner. Drew brought us out to dinner, and he's like, "Hey, we all are on the speaker circuit. Aren't you sick of all the best conferences being really far away and really expensive?" We're like, "Yeah, that doesn't serve our community and our customers as speakers, who, most of the people here can't afford to spend 10 grand to go to VS Live in Florida or whatever. So we should do something about that." And the other thing we noticed, at least this has changed a lot, but back then, the community was very siloed, right? You would go to a .NET conference and learn about .NET. You would go to a Java conference and learn about Java, and et cetera. And Ruby was becoming a thing at the time. And the problem is with any tool set is you learn how to solve problems the way the tool set wants you to solve problems. And so we thought, wouldn't it be great if, as a .NET developer at the time, I worked in C#, I could go to a Ruby session or a Java session and just learn a little bit about how they're implementing anonymous functions or whatever, and bring that viewpoint back to what I do day to day. And so that's where the mash of CodeMash comes from. Is we wanted to, one, provide a conference that mashed all those topics together. So I could go to a couple .NET sessions and then go to a session on domain-driven design and then one on Java. And then we also wanted it to be accessible. So we want it to the Midwest. So we put it, in Northern Ohio up in at the Kalahari Resort, which is the largest indoor water park in the United States, filled with 2,700 nerds. So that's fun. So it has to be accessible and it had to be affordable. So it's not for profit. It's all volunteer run. We run super lean on our budget because we wanted to keep the ticket price as low as possible. So if you have to pay out of pocket, it's still pretty affordable. And so that's kind of how it got started, and our first year, it took us a year to plan the first event, and we're now on our 14th year. I think we had maybe 185 people at the first CodeMash, and now we have 2,700 professional attendees, and we now have a free Kids Mash program, and we get about 800 to 1,000 kids through the week that take part in that program.
So tell me about the Kids Mash. I have 3 kids, and I've never really thought about taking my kids to a tech conference. So where did that idea come from, and what is that like for the parents and for the kids?
Yeah, so the great thing, one of the key elements of Agile, right, is self-organizing. So we're in the Kalahari Water Park, and it's in January because that's the cheapest week of the year for their hotel rates, again, to keep it affordable. And people just started bringing their families. And as we grew, it was like half the water park was CodeMash families and the other half were just randos. So they wanted just a way to know who each other were, and, they could commiserate about their spouses up at the technical CodeMash sessions and stuff like that. And then we thought, well, maybe we could do some activities for them. And it started with, we'll do bedtime story time, or hey, we've got this cool idea, let's let them go play with the 3D printers. And it just grew into, well, then we had speakers who would submit a talk and go, oh, by the way, I'd love to do a version of this talk for kids if you want me to do that. And so speakers drove it and the parents drove it. And now it's a fully funded kind of free part of CodeMash. For a couple of years, we were doing tours. Across the street from the Kalahari is a NASA facility with the second largest vacuum test chamber in the world. And so we would bring the kids over there for tours because we had a friend that worked over there. So, Chris Judd has had projects where they could hands-on with soldering and stuff like that, build a lightsaber and build other things. He always does a cool gimmick like that. So we have like real technology sessions for them, as well as just fun stuff for them to do. There's a room filled with approximately a Brazilian Legos that they can play with. And we do this cool thing where it's called a human 3D printer, where the parents are the 3D printer and the kids are creating the instructions for the printer. So like move ahead 2 steps, rotate left, and hilarity ensues as they have to learn how to think logically to give instructions to their parents. And it's just been a great dimension, I think, to add to the conference.
Yeah. So what are the age groups for the kids that participate?
We get some teenagers, but most of them are that participate in sessions are probably 5 to 9 years old. They're probably in that range because it's easy to miss a couple of days of school. It's not that big of a deal.
Yeah.
We do get some teenagers, and for the right teenager, we'll let them shadow their parent at the professional sessions if that's what they're more comfortable with. Right? We don't care about that. So.
Well, that's cool. I think it's important to get kids involved early. Like I said, I have 3. I have 9, 5, and 1. So getting them involved in technology early is important, and especially girls too. I have a daughter, and I think it's important for women to get involved in tech at a young age. And I teach part-time at Winthrop, and I was asking my students because it was 2 years ago that I noticed in my senior level web development course, junior and seniors were in there, but there were only 2 females. I had 24 students and only 2 females. So finally, and James Damore paper came out, and there was a lot of controversy about women in tech, and I was like, I'm just going to throw it out there. So I said, why are you two the only 2 females in here? What's going on? And one of them's like, well, I actually was a graphic design major at first because I wanted to come into tech, but my guidance counselor in high school said that it's really hard for women in tech, so I should go graphic design instead. And I was like, oh, that's ridiculous. And then the other girl's like, well, we didn't, all the boys took programming classes and the girls didn't really want to because we didn't want to be with the boys. We wanted to be with the other girls. So it just blew my mind, like in high school and middle school, that they weren't, steered in the direction that this is a growing career. This is viable for everybody. It's not gender specific. Anybody can get involved.
Yeah.
So I think it's really cool to, have kids of young ages involved in technology and kind of seeing what their parents are doing when they go to these conferences and making it really fun by being at a water park. That's pretty cool too.
Yeah, it's the other element is you and I are in the generation where technology was emerging. Mm-hmm. So you had to be a fiddler, at least when I was growing up. I don't know how old you are, but when I was growing up, a lot of the technology you had to fiddle with and make work. Like, when P&P first came out, we called it plug and play with it all weekend because it still didn't work right out of the box. Mm-hmm. And you had to know how technology worked to be able to use technology. Now anyone is a consumer of technology. And so the current generation, like my kids are 17 and 20, they know how to consume technology very well. They're very comfortable. They've grown up with smartphones and tablets and so on, but they don't know how to make technology. And so CodeMash is kind of a way to kind of expose kids to that, and show them that there is, you need to make the technology that people use. So.
Yeah, I think that's fun, and I know I got exposed to tech at a young age. My neighbor worked at NCR at the time, and he would always bring home spare parts of computers, and we would put them together, and he would give them churches or nonprofits that are around in the area. So we were building 286s, and it was just a lot of fun to get to put the parts together. And I remember when we first double spaced a hard drive and it had 500 megs. I'm like, God, we'll never fill this thing up. And,
yep.
But that was kind of my exposure, and I was kind of hooked from that point on. I'm going to be in tech. There's no reason to go any other direction.
Yeah, and my day job, I work for a large bank. We have some great programs about getting girls and women into tech. And I was doing some research, and there was a study that showed in your freshman year of college, most boys have been exposed to programming, so they come in with high confidence. And most girls have not been exposed to programming, and many drop out because they feel like they can never catch up with the boys. They have this huge lead on them. How can they ever catch up? And by the end of their sophomore year, they have an equivalent skill set compared to the boys who had the head start. So that the head start might get them passionate and feel comfortable going into a computer science program, but it actually doesn't provide any value once you're in school. And so I was trying to share that with them, that don't worry, you're all going to catch up. That maybe cuts, makes their first semester easier for them, but by the end of your sophomore, you guys will be on an equal footing, especially once you graduate.
Yeah, no, I think that's really cool. When I was reading about CodeMash and I saw the kids mash, I was like, oh, that's really cool. I think that's awesome. I think just to bring your kids and to come with you. That's one of the downfalls of going and speaking at conferences. Your kids are at home. You kind of miss that time with them.
Yeah.
So that's really cool. So as a participant in someone going to CodeMash, what kind of sessions should I expect to find?
So we there's 4 days at CodeMash, and to keep it affordable, we let you either attend all 4 days or just the Thursday, Friday. So the Tuesday, Wednesday we call pre-compiler sessions. And those are 4-hour long, deep dive, hands-on. You need to bring a laptop and install some prereqs and stuff like that. We had I don't think we're doing it this year, but for the past couple of years, we had a woman come in, and she combined 2 4-hour classes together into an 8-hour block with a lunch break. And you learned 7 programming languages in 8 hours.
Whoa.
And it was, yeah, I know. Isn't that cool? And so there's that, or it's a, you know, a lot of people get their first exposure to building mobile apps in that type of environment, right? So it's very hands-on curriculum type of work. The Thursday, Friday are more traditional 1-hour sessions. They're more lecture centric for the most part, and you can get in and get out. But there are 16 concurrent sessions in each time slot, and there are like 8 or 9 or 10 time slots a day. So there's a ton of, and we have over 200 speakers at CodeMash. So there's a ton of content, and it's all across the board. We have a great cybersecurity track. Of course, there's the typical enterprise and web type tracks. There's usually a design track and a testing track. Jim Holmes will be, you know, in the house this year, at least hanging out. And I'm sure he'll be talking about testing because that's the only thing he talks about.
Yeah. Yeah, he was on the show.
And it'll be great to have him in. And then the other thing is we have, it's almost more like a festival now because there's all this other stuff going on while that's happening. We've got, of course, the Kids Mash going on. We have a board game room that runs almost 24/7. And I have some friends that come in from the board gaming industry, and they kind of run that room. We have another room that's like laser tag. And I don't know if you've ever heard of a game called a video game called Artemis.
No, I haven't.
Without breaching any trademark, it's a Star Trek bridge simulator.
Oh.
So my friends at Gaming Nomads, they do this for a living with companies, and they bring in these 2 Star Trek bridges. You've got walls. There's 5 different stations. There's the captain, and you have to fight the aliens or whatever, right? We're not supposed to say Star Trek. It's all Artemis. But it's funny. We'll get dev teams that come in and play that, and they're like, "Oh, we're gonna do so good. We know each other," and they fail miserably because they don't know how to communicate and work as a team. So it's this amazing like team building exercise, and that's why Bill and Lori at Gaming Nomads, like they go to different companies, they get brought in to do team building exercises with them and stuff. And the same thing with the laser tag. It's also for fun. And then we have like an electronics room. We have this year in there, people are going to be able to build an LED name badge that's programmable, but you have to build it from scratch. So you have to learn how to solder and stuff like that. And it's going to have IoT sensors on it. So I'll have a weather sensor, like a temperature and humidity sensor, and so on. And then there's and then we bring in CDOG Studios. They're professional 3D modelers and printers. And they bring in like racks of 3D printers, and they teach professional level modeling to both the kids and the adults. And so that's a ton of fun too. So in addition to all these sessions, you can kind of go into like this maker space there and go from there. Well, what else do we have? And then we have parties at night and stuff like that.
So how's this growing? Like, where are these ideas coming from? Is it the same core group of guys and that have been on the board kind of running this? Are you bringing in external ideas? Are you getting ideas from other conferences? Because it seems like, you know, going from 180 people the first year to where you are today is just an incredible growth.
Yeah, early on, we never knew if there were ever was going to be another CodeMash. And we finally, you know, all right, this is working. It's probably going to stick around for a while. And Jim Holmes and Jason Gilmore and I were the original board. And then Jim and Jason retired from the board probably about 5 years ago. And that's when I went from vice president to president. And then we brought in Jason Follis, who's a big leader in the .NET community, and Rob Gillen, who's down from Knoxville, Tennessee. And you probably know Jason because Rob, yeah. Because he runs the speaker content with Chris Judd. And Jason Follis runs our sponsorship now. And so it's us as a core. We work on it year round. We have a committee now of about 15 different people, each with their own specialty. A couple of people run registration. Maddie, they run our off-campus hotels. We have a shuttle system to the 4 off-campus hotels. Plus, we shuttle in speakers from the airport. So they manage all of that. We have, a couple of people that run speakers. We have a sponsors support team. So there's a lot of different, the Kids Mash team and so on. they work on it probably 7-8 months a year. We do a big planning meeting kickoff in early summer. And then we bring in about 50 college volunteers or early career volunteers for help just during the week at CodeMash. So they just show up, train them on Monday. They get to go to CodeMash for free and get to network with people and so on. So there's been a lot. So we steal from every conference. Hey, I went to this conference. It worked great. We'll borrow that. We have openly shared what we do with other people who wanted to start similar conferences. So there's the guys over in Chicago that run that conference, which is their take on kind of the CodeMash ideals. There were a bunch of tech fests down in Texas that did the same thing. There was one over in the Poconos. So we've always been very open with how we do things. And we run very lean. We run our budget like a backlog, right? So we got to earn down the backlog budget-wise to be able to afford extras. And then people will come with ideas. Like this year, I think we're going to do a no-holds-barred Pinewood Derby race. And someone had the idea, and I'm like, that's a great idea. You're now in charge of it. And let me know how much money you have, and we'll try to fit into the budget. Greg Huber, who's for a long time has helped us on sponsorship, and he took over communications. And he's like, wow, I think we can invest more into the maker space and make that an even better space. I'm like, great, run with it. Let me know what you need. So the most important role I play is just to stay out of other people's way. Like, let them run with the ball and just make sure we have the budget and the resources set up for it.
So is it as fun as it sounds like it's going to be?
I have a blast it's funny. I've been to every CodeMash and I've never been to CodeMash because I'm so busy the week of helping run the thing that I don't get to go to sessions or I get to walk through the board game, but I don't get to play board games usually. But it's a blast. We get so much feedback from people that like, oh, it's like I'm energized for the next year. And I always challenge people in the closing ceremony to, you're going to learn a million things. Just do one thing different on Monday when you go back to work. You can't do a million things differently, but you can do one thing differently.
Yeah, that's really good advice.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I kind of do with the guests that I have on. I try to, if I can remember maybe 10% of what they say and then apply maybe 1% of that, then I'm doing really good and I feel good about myself. So.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we talked a little bit about, what it's like for the first time folks, what it's like for the Kids Mash. How do people find out more about CodeMash and how does someone register to go and what's the process like?
Yeah, so it's just codemash.org. CODEMASH. I often type in codmash.org, which is not an event you want to do. And there's a big buy tickets button. That web page will show you how the hotels work. We still have some rooms left in the Kalahari, which is where the conference is. We have less expensive hotels on a free shuttle service that we have. It'll show you all about that. And then you buy your tickets over at Eventbrite. They've been a great partner of ours for years now. It's as simple as that. And then on our homepage, there are some mailing lists. So if you are a speaker, or even if you're an aspiring speaker, there's a speaker mailing list that you can join. And we do our call for speakers about August. And we even have mentors for speakers. So if you've never presented before, we reserve a certain portion of our tracks for new to speaking speakers and new to CodeMash speakers to make sure that we're bringing in new ideas and new diversity and new perspectives. And so we'll assign you a mentor before you write your abstract and before you submit if you want help then. And if you've been picked, we can assign you a mentor to help you deliver and prepare your content and just rehearse and know how to be best prepared. And then there's a mailing list for sponsors and there's a mailing list for attendees. So once you get your ticket, you'll be in our system. And then towards CodeMash, so late December, early January, we'll start sending out one email a day that says, all right, next Monday is when you're going to check in. This is what you need to know about Monday. And, Tuesday, this is what you need to know about Tuesday. We're going to have dinner at this time, So we kind of walk you through all of the details. And there is more stuff going on at CodeMash than you can do. So it's about, and we have the 3-2-1 rule, right? 3 hours of sleep, 2 meals a day, 1 shower a day. is how you survive CodeMash.
Awesome. I guess you could just go to the water park and, and knock out that shower.
Well, we have people. It's totally cool for people to skip a session. And our first year, we did a session on professional networking in the lazy river.
Nice.
So yeah, that was a lot of fun. And if you stay off campus, you get a wristband to still be able to use the Kalahari Water Park, which normally you'd have to pay $40 a person for. So a lot of families will get the cheaper off-campus hotel. And we partner with the Great Wolf Lodge, which is another indoor water park. So they'll stay at the Great Wolf Lodge and get access to both water parks. Because, in January, I guess you want to spend as much time in the water as possible. And then Thursday night, the big attendee party, we close down the water park to the public, and it's only CodeMash from 10 p.m. to like 1 in the morning. And that's a lot of fun too, to be the only group in the water park.
Yeah, that is cool. I'm really looking forward to going there and to meeting you in person, and hopefully having some fans out there, some people that'll come and listen to me talk and enjoy it. But yeah, I think it's gonna be a lot of fun. I'm really excited about it. It'll be my first CodeMash and my first conference in probably like 6 months. So I'm pretty excited about that, getting back into going to these events.
Yeah, it's awesome that you're coming up. My brother lives in Charlotte, but if you're up there, if you have listeners that are going to be at CodeMash as well, or can swing by one of the nights, we could probably set up a meetup or something like that for you.
Yeah, that'll be fun. I plan on at least doing one show from there as well while we're up there, at least recording one from there. So with some of the other speakers, so it should be fun. I'm looking forward to it.
All right, well, we'll find you podcasting space. We used to have a podcasting room, but that got turned into the Glowforge laser cutter room.
Yeah, well, laser cutter is way cooler than podcasting.
Yeah, we'll put you over by the roller coaster.
All right, well, that sounds fun. So how can people connect with you or find out more about you and the things that you're working on as well?
Yeah, I used to do a ton of stuff like that when I worked at Microsoft. And I guess LinkedIn is the easiest way nowadays. Just Brian Prince on LinkedIn, and look for the Brian Prince with the orange hair.
All right.
CodeMash, I always color my hair orange. I used to do a blog, used to do face page and all that, and I just now I got a day job, so I can't spend as much time on that stuff as I used to.
Yeah, understood. All right, well, thanks so much for coming on the show, and I'm looking forward to seeing you soon.
Yeah, I'll see you soon in January.
All right, thanks.
Yeah.
All right, geeks, I hope you guys enjoyed that episode with Brian Prince from CodeMash, and I hope you guys are looking forward to going to CodeMash. Also, don't forget about the specials that different sponsors and affiliates have offered to our show listeners at geekleader.com. You can go there and click on sponsors and affiliates, and you'll see all those deals, including $100 off accessories from a Peloton if you want to buy the tread or bicycle. And I'm surprised on how many people have been purchasing those, which is fantastic. Also, you get 20% off Splash Top. They were our sponsors for last week's episode, and will be some sponsors for the future episodes. So check that out. The 20% deal is only available for a Geek Leader community. So check that out. And there's some other special offers that are also on geekleader.com. So don't forget to check those out and have a wonderful holiday season. Thanks so much.